Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: China is benefiting from the Sikh murder fallout. Missing Chinese minister fathered child for mistress with U.S. surrogate. Beijing aims to snatch the entire South China Sea. The U.S. Navy is backing down. Chinese dissident living out of a suitcase at Taiwan airport. Chinese TV presenter linked to missing foreign minister had surrogate child in U.S. China is benefiting from the Sikh murder fallout. Bloomberg. The recent fallout between Canada and India over the murder of a Sikh activist is straining the ties that bind the Quad together, a grouping of the US, Japan, India, and Australia. China is watching this potential fracturing of the alliance closely and stands to gain the most from the current impasse. The West's deliberate blindness to the authoritarianism that has taken root in India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a key reason why the US and its partners are in this position. If the US wants to counter China's influence in the region, it needs to repair the damage with India quickly. Missing Chinese minister fathered child for mistress with US surrogate. Telegraph. China's former foreign minister, Qin Gang, reportedly fathered a child with his television presenter mistress, Fu Xiaotian, using a surrogate mother in the US. Surrogacy is banned in China, so the couple allegedly used this method to have a child. The relationship between Qin Gang and Fu Xiaotian is currently being investigated by authorities in Beijing. The situation could be embarrassing for China if it is revealed that the child is a U.S. citizen. Qin Gang was dismissed from his role as foreign minister in July for undisclosed reasons, but it is believed that his extramarital affair and the birth of a child in the U.S. were factors in his dismissal. Beijing aims to snatch the entire South China Sea. The U.S. Navy is backing down. Telegraph. China's recent activities in the South China Sea, including placing a buoyed net around the Scarborough Shoal and intercepting Filipino fishing boats, demonstrate its determination to assert its claims of indisputable sovereignty within the Nine-Line. The Chinese government has dismissed a 2016 ruling from The Hague that its claims to waters inside the Nine-Line were without legal foundation. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea provides a clear framework for dividing maritime territories, but China has chosen to disregard it. The author warns that ignoring China's actions could have serious consequences, including a risk of escalation that could result in loss of life. The international community needs to uphold international law and work together to counter Chinese belligerence. This includes strengthening alliances, tightening maritime legal provisions, and promoting economic resilience. The recent resolution of a boundary dispute between Indonesia and Vietnam is a positive example of what can be achieved. The author suggests that a united front, backed by U.S. military might, is the best solution for now. Chinese dissident living out of a suitcase at Taiwan airport. The Independent. Chinese dissident Chen Ximing has been living in Taiwan's Taoyuan International Airport for several weeks, refusing to leave until he is granted asylum in either the U.S. or Canada. Chen, a well-known political activist who has been targeted by Chinese authorities, fled China after receiving a phone call from the police urging him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. He has described his situation as dangerous and urgent and is willing to wait at the airport for months if necessary. Chen is known for his annual commemorations of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, a taboo subject in China. He has previously been detained by Chinese authorities and has noticed a significant crackdown on dissent in recent years. Chen initially attempted to flee to Thailand but felt unsafe there due to its close relationship with China. He then traveled to Taiwan, where he has been stranded at the airport since September. Taiwan has an icy relationship with China and does not have a formal refugee policy. Chen has called on the US and Canada to grant him asylum and hopes that the US government will help bring democracy to China. Chinese TV presenter linked to missing foreign minister had surrogate child in US. Financial Times. Fu Xiaotian, a high-profile Chinese television presenter, is reported to have had a child last year with the help of a surrogate mother in the U.S. Fu was in a relationship with Qin Gang, who was China's foreign minister until he was suddenly replaced in June. Surrogacy is illegal in China. The authorities are reportedly scrutinizing the relationship between Qin and Fu, but it is unclear how central it was to his removal from office. Closed trial of Me Too journalist spotlights China's abuse of law. The Independent. Chinese #MeToo activist Sophia Huang Shuaqin and labor rights advocate Wang Jianbing have been tried on charges of subversion behind closed doors, according to their supporters. The trial, which took place at the Guangzhou Intermediate People's Court, has concluded. What the world should expect from a second Trump term. Financial Times. The foreign policies of a second Trump administration are difficult to predict, as Trump is an egoist and his actions are driven by self-interest. However, there are some things that seem probable. The US is likely to reduce sanctions against Russia and slow down support for Ukraine, which would weaken America's global clout. Trump may also step up his past menaces against international treaties, such as NATO and bilateral guarantees with South Korea and Japan. However, there may be more continuities than ruptures in other areas, such as protectionism and Iran. The most important policy that may catch the world out is Trump's approach to US-China relations, as he may be interested in improving trade relations and not interested in containing China. China produces world record peanut test crop amid national food security push. South China Morning Post. Researchers at the Shandong Academy of Agricultural Sciences, SAAS, in China have achieved a world record-breaking peanut yield of 12,980 kilograms per hectare. The yield is 3.4 times the national crop average and is the result of 2 decades of research by the SAAS to increase peanut yields. The breakthrough came from the use of the single-seed precision sowing method, which involves planting 1 peanut seed per hole instead of 2 per hole. The method was developed in 2001 to address issues with seed quality and has now been adopted across the country. Cultural decoupling from China is not the answer. Foreign policy. U.S. cultural institutions are grappling with the challenges of engaging with China while avoiding complicity in the Chinese government's repression. The lure of the Chinese market has led many cultural entities, including Hollywood studios, universities, and publishers, to make compromises to satisfy the Chinese government's demands. These compromises include altering plot lines, self-censorship, and modifying content to avoid offending Chinese authorities. However, the risks of engagement are becoming more apparent, as China exerts control over narrative and shapes global perceptions through its cultural influence. The U.S. cultural sector is now considering its own version of de-risking, weighing the trade-offs and pitfalls of engagement with China. The challenge is to avoid complicity in the Chinese government's patterns of repression while maintaining enough cultural connectivity to avoid deepening distrust and distancing between the American and Chinese peoples. The risks of U.S. cultural engagement with China are real, as seen in instances where companies and institutions have compromised their values to maintain access to the Chinese market. To address these challenges, U.S. cultural actors should publicly commit to mitigating moral risks and resist Chinese pressure. This does not imply an absolute refusal to compromise, as some concessions may still have value, but it requires transparency and ongoing risk assessments. Independent cultural institutions can seek out individuals who have the leeway to engage internationally and offer authentic perspectives. The U.S. government can also expand channels for legal immigration to ensure ongoing ties with China through independent professionals and creators. Overall, the cultural sector must find a delicate balance that reduces risk while sustaining important and constructive ties with China. Chinese dissident stranded in Taiwan airport pleads for asylum in US or Canada. CNN. Chinese dissident Chen Ximing, who has been living in Taiwan's Taoyuan International Airport since Friday, has called on the US or Canada to grant him asylum after fleeing Thailand for fear of being deported back to China. Chen, who is known for commemorating the anniversary of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, said that his activities had resulted in increased pressure and scrutiny from Chinese authorities. Dissidents and civil society activists have faced a widening crackdown under President Xi Jinping. Chen said that he felt sad, angry, and afraid after receiving a call from the police in July, who told him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. He fled China and made his way to Thailand, where he registered as a refugee with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. However, he did not feel safe and decided to flee to Taiwan. Taiwan does not recognize the concept of asylum, but it has increasingly been seen as a safe haven for dissidents fleeing China. Chen is hoping for eventual asylum in Canada or the US. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Today, we have a diverse range of news stories from China, covering topics such as political tensions, human rights abuses, and agricultural achievements. Let's dive in. First, we have the fallout between Canada and India over the murder of a Sikh activist. China is closely watching this situation, as it could potentially benefit from the strained ties within the Quad alliance. The West's failure to address India's authoritarianism under Prime Minister Narendra Modi has put the US and its partners in a difficult position. If they want to counter China's influence in the region, repairing the damage with India quickly is crucial. Next, we have the scandal involving China's former foreign minister, Qin Gang, and his alleged use of a surrogate mother in the US to have a child with his mistress. While surrogacy is illegal in China, Qin and his mistress reportedly found a workaround. The authorities in Beijing are now investigating the situation, which could be embarrassing if it is revealed that the child is a US citizen. Qin's dismissal from his role as foreign minister in July adds another layer of intrigue to this story. Moving on to the South China Sea, China's recent activities in the region demonstrate its determination to assert its claims of sovereignty, despite a 2016 ruling from The Hague that deemed those claims illegal. Ignoring China's actions could have serious consequences, including a risk of escalation. The international community needs to work together to counter Chinese belligerence and uphold international law. A united front, backed by U.S. military might, is the best solution for now. In a different vein, we have the story of Chinese dissident Chen Ximing, who has been living in Taiwan's airport for several weeks, refusing to leave until he is granted asylum in either the U.S. or Canada. Chen's situation is dangerous and urgent, as he has been targeted by Chinese authorities for his political activism. He hopes that the U.S. government will help bring democracy to China and is calling on both the U.S. and Canada to grant him asylum. Now, let's talk about cultural engagement with China. Many U.S. cultural institutions have made compromises to satisfy the Chinese government's demands, but the risks of engagement are becoming more apparent. The challenge is to find a balance that reduces risk while sustaining important ties. This requires transparency, ongoing risk assessments, and a commitment to resisting Chinese pressure. The U.S. government can also play a role by expanding channels for legal immigration, ensuring ongoing ties with China through independent professionals and creators. Lastly, we have the story of Chinese dissident Sophia Huang Shuaqin and labor rights advocate Wang Jianbing, who have been tried on charges of subversion behind closed doors. This highlights China's abuse of the law and its crackdown on dissent. The international community must continue to shed light on these human rights abuses and advocate for the rights of those who are silenced. That's all for today's news from China. Remember, the world is a complex and ever-changing place, and it's important for us to stay informed and engaged. Now, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions? I'm here to discuss and answer any queries you may have. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the Sikh team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of Sikh Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the Sikh team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize Sikh Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, sikhbrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive Sikh Brief via email.